Hello, Family Institute of Connecticut supporters. My name is Peter Wolfgang. It has been my privilege to be the executive director of this organization for 17 years, roughly half its lifespan. And I can tell you that in the 35 years of FIC's existence, we have never had a year as successful as 2024, better even than last year. For the first time ever, we seized the initiative. We set the agenda. The fun began with our Let Kids Be Kids press conference, the first step in a multi-year project that Family Institute of Connecticut and our allies are undertaking. Hello everyone, my name is Peter Wolfgang. I am the president of Family Institute of Connecticut Action, and we are here today, all of us, as part of Let Kids Be Kids. This is a coalition of concerned parents and organizations that have presented two bills to the Education Committee for which we are seeking a public hearing. Public schools around the state are secretly transing kids from one so-called gender identity to the other. Our demand that this be addressed completely changed the dynamic in Hartford. For the first time, we were the ones driving the conversation and everyone was reacting to us. And we were not alone. Members of the Black and Puerto Rican caucus of our state legislature rose up against the gender ideology agenda. Some of them demanded that the phrase expectant mothers be included in our law alongside pregnant persons.
I don't answer to pregnant person or birthing person. That's not what I answer to.
The white progressives who fought back against the Black and Puerto Rican caucus basically made themselves a laughingstock. We have footage of white progressives from towns like West Hartford lecturing Black Democrats from New Haven about discrimination. It was a farce. We had one legislator say, well, in that case, there should be pregnant fathers, that phrase in the law as well.
So I am a mother. My children call me mother. They call me quite a few other things as well. And I just, to the proponents of this amendment, if we are going to be inclusive, would you also add then pregnant father?
It made the New York Post. It made newspapers in the UK. It made the agenda here in Hartford a laughingstock, and deservedly so. Let me tell you about some of the other victories that we won this year. There are so many of them that I'm going to have to look down and refer to my paper a little. But the first, I think you know, it's very big. We stopped the abortion amendment to our state constitution. In fact, the amendment this year was not just about abortion, but even the gender ideology. They wanted to put the most extreme descriptions of those agendas, abortion and transgender, right into our state constitution. Defenders of women's sports rose up and testified against it at the state capitol and embarrassed the leaders of that agenda. I've never seen anything like it. They were flummoxed. We defeated the Protect Doctors Who Mutilate Minors bill. This is a complicated topic. This is already a law. It was snuck in as an implementer the year before under the cover of darkness, undemocratically. It created a hurdle for minors who change their minds about being gender mutilated by a doctor and then want to sue over it. We brought attention to this at a public hearing this year. We revealed the undemocratic way that this became law, and even the Hartford Courant covered the outrageous way in which this came about. The committee was flummoxed. We were able to use this to draw attention to the grossness of gender ideology in general. The committee was again beside themselves, and that bill died as well. We stopped the forced Catholic hospitals to allow referrals for abortion and gender transitions bill. I'm Peter Wolfgang, president of Family Institute of Connecticut Action, and I'm speaking against HB 5424. I want to begin with a quote from the columnist Chris Powell. The real rationale for forcing medical providers to allow abortion referrals is to stamp out contrary consciences and religious beliefs. Ironically, the people doing this stamping out tend to be the same ones who speak of the benefits of diversity. That's what you're doing with this bill. You're attacking real diversity. This bill is a blatant attack on Catholic healthcare and religious freedom in our state. This bill undermines Catholic hospitals in our state. It cleverly omits the word Catholic But Senator Anwar, you put it right out there in the back and forth with Cara Delaney that this is about Catholic hospitals. I think Representative Tersiak said, well, it's not only Catholic hospitals, it can be others. But really, who else is opposed to abortion? We're talking about Catholic health care. This bill was an outrage against religious liberty and human life and parental rights. Now look, I'm a person of relatively moderate temperament, but you had to see my throwdown with the Public Health Committee over this bill. What they were trying to do here is outrageous. And I think it was probably one of the biggest throwdowns I've ever had with a committee in my 20 years at the state capitol. They had it coming, and we're glad that bill died. We stopped assisted suicide from being legalized in Connecticut again. This battle in previous years has always had certain comical elements to it, but I don't think it was ever quite the farce that it was in Connecticut in 2024. The year began with the leading proponent for assisted suicide leading a much celebrated walk across the state in favor of the cause of people hastening their own deaths. Oh, the media coverage.
Versions of the aid and dying legislation have been proposed in the state legislature for years at this point, ultimately failing every time. But organizers of this walk across the state, they are on a mission to build support and educate the public to get this legislation passed in 2024.
We were told that the bill had momentum this year, but instead what happened was Josh Elliott, a proponent of assisted suicide, openly admitted in the media the deceptive strategy that the pro-assisted suicide activists were pursuing. They wanted to pass a law that almost no one would be eligible for, and then they were going to come back and expand the law. And they didn't even hide that. They bragged about it to the media. And then, to make things even worse on themselves, a woman named Linda Bluestein, a pro-assisted suicide activist in Connecticut, took advantage of the no residency rule in Vermont to famously kill herself there. And it came out afterwards that journalists that were covering this story, her death, for the Boston Globe, signed the paperwork attesting to her sound mind and her right to kill herself, and they barely even knew her. Instead of becoming a test case of why assisted suicide should be legal in Connecticut, Linda Bluestein is Exhibit A for why assisted suicide should never be legalized in Connecticut. And of course, it wasn't just the failures of the other side. We did great work. We and our coalition allies have been doing great work on this issue for 12 years, but never have we crushed it as decisively as we did in 2024, and we thank all of you for that. We stopped the fertility coverage for persons who do not engage in procreative sex bill. I can hardly believe I just said those words out loud, but you had to be at the press conference. You had to see it with your own eyes. There was one legislator who said he wanted that bill to apply to so-called thruples. Those are persons with multiple partners. It's been much in the news. If you're not familiar with this, count yourself lucky. These are the sort of things that we have to fight up in this building. But I'm happy to tell you, without going too much into the gruesome details, that we stopped that bill as well. We stopped the Empower School Librarians to place children's porn in the children's section of the library over the objections of the Board of Education bill. Another one where I can hardly believe I just mouthed those words. But that's how crazy it's gotten in this building behind us. This was an opportunity, again, to force the public to engage directly in the grossness of gender ideology. We're the Family Institute of Connecticut. We're all about family values. We had to talk about things up there at the state capitol that I never want to have to say out loud. But this is the sort of world that we live in now. They were trying to pass a bill to give the librarians this power over the elected officials of your boards of education. This is how they do it, through administrative law and other little ways to try to take power away from our elected representatives and the voters who put them in power to say, oh, we have nothing to do with this, it's out of our hands. This was an incredibly gross thing that the people in the building behind me tried to do, and we stopped it. We not only stopped it, we made it a showcase of what's going on in Connecticut and throughout the country, how horrible it is, and how people need to rise up and stop it. There are many fights even going on just in the remaining months of 2024. We are fighting against the new rules around the federal Title IX law, which would affect women's sports in private places here in the state of Connecticut. We are fighting an effort to undo the victories we've won on abortion just this year through the regulatory process. Again, very undemocratic thing that we caught, that we sent a letter to all the proper officials here in Connecticut, an ongoing fight that we are working around the clock on to make sure that they don't pass even, I can hardly believe I'm saying this, but post-birth infanticide for children who survive botched abortions.
When the abortionist delivers a live baby, they have three choices. One of them is to provide care for the new baby, and they risk potentially being sued for wrongful life by the mother. Second is, if the baby is very premature, they set them aside and hope that they die quickly so that the problem is taken care of. The third, don't even want to think of this, but it's the Dr. Gosnell type of thing where the baby is actively killed. Those are the only three choices when a baby is born live after abortion.
They're trying to make that legal in Connecticut through the regulatory process. Our friends at the Catholic Conference and some of our allies are working closely with the Family Institute to stop that. Finally, what lies ahead is our effort to organize pastors in the state of Connecticut and the churches to rise up against this agenda. One of the most important books on faith in America in the last few years is Eric Metaxas's Letter to the American Church. We need a letter to the Connecticut church. The church needs to rise up on this. This is something that we're going to be working on. It's going to be one of our highest priorities over the next year or two in Connecticut and beyond. The church absolutely must rise up. The time is late. The time is now. The church must rise up and stand with Family Institute of Connecticut and with our other allies, because at the end of the day, Family Institute of Connecticut cannot save Connecticut. Only Jesus Christ can save Connecticut, which is to say the body of Christ, the church. We need the churches to rise up. That's something we're going to be talking about a lot more in the future. But for now, I want to thank you, everyone who has ever supported the Family Institute of Connecticut throughout its 35 years of history, and particularly in this last year where we had major breakthroughs. We did it because of all of you. And I hope that you will continue to contribute to FIC in 2024 and beyond. I think our best work is still ahead of us. I think these last 2 years in particular, the post-pandemic era, has been an entirely new FIC. And there's so much more we can do with your increased support. Thank you.